My name is Brandon Bryant. I'm a 27-year-old veteran. I was born here, born in Missoula. I was very much an introvert growing up. Single mother, 2 sisters, crap load of female cousins. So I was pretty much alone all the time. And I grew up with books and comic books and heroes and villains. I kind of grew up optimistic, idealistic. I grew up in a Christian home. I wasn't necessarily too patriotic. I was more of the fact of good guys versus bad guys, making decisions and doing the right thing. I decided to get into the Air Force because I was racking up college debt and I didn't know what else to do. So when I was talking to the Air Force recruiter, he's like, you know those guys that sit in the operations center for James Bond and gather the intelligence he needs to do his mission? And I was like, yeah, I know those guys, like Q and all them. And he's like, yeah, you'll be one of those guys. And I was like, it's pretty badass. Getting into the drone program was weird. The introduction is like, this is what we do. We kill people and break things. That is what our job is. I worried about it, you know, like, can I do this? Can I actually kill someone? Could I actually pull the trigger? I mean, I'm not actually pulling the trigger, I'm guiding the missile in, but it's essentially the same thing. I don't see a difference. We typically flew in Iraq between 8,000 and 12,000 feet. And then in Afghanistan, we flew between 18 and 25,000 feet. And depending on atmospherics, if it was a completely clear day, you would definitely get a good picture. And depending on how close you were, you could probably read the license plate on someone's car. We can see something as simple as people playing a soccer game. We can see individual players and we can even see the ball.
It would have been a 7 or 8 hour trip for the 16-year-old Tariq through treacherous terrain, through potential Taliban hotspots, and of course under drone surveillance.
It was the first time that the international media, the drone victims, the tribal elders, and the general public came together. It was held in a 5-star hotel. The tribal elders spoke in terms of political implications, how they felt, and the drone victims spoke about personal stories.
This is a part of the drone missile that was used to kill that child.
It was a gathering to get the voice of the victims of drone attacks out to the general public as well as the rest of the world.
And that was the main goal. We were going to use the media to try and establish who had been killed and also why, where and how.
Well, because of the inaccessibility of Waziristan, it's very, very hard to compile any kind of credible evidence or evidence that other people will see as credible. That was part of the reason we organised this conference in Islamabad.
We called it a jirga.
A jirga is a traditional tribal gathering.
That's what people in that area use to settle their disputes.
At one stage I came across a young boy, Tariq Aziz. When I was talking to Tariq, one of the first things that he did was he handed me his cousin's student ID card. And as I looked at it, I looked back at Tariq and I noticed that he was crying. He started to tell me the story of his cousin who had been killed from a drone strike. He'd come to the Jirga primarily to inform us a little bit more about what had happened to his cousin, to people in his local village, and find out how to stop the killing. We sat together all day, we ate together at lunchtime, we laughed together, we became friends. Tariq was extremely intelligent and funny to be around. He had a nice sense of humour. He was fascinated by photography and intrigued by Western music, mentioning artists, and one that sprang to mind was Lady Gaga. He started to talk about drone strikes in his village, how he was unable to sleep at night. He was scared, he was worried about his family, his friends. Tariq was traumatized.
He wanted to talk about how he was affected by drone attacks and basically to give the message that the people of Waziristan want justice against the killings of innocent civilians under drone attacks that are operated by the US.
और इस तरह सबूत इकट्ठा किया है कि इंशाल्लाह वो कोई भी किसी तरह भी न CIA वाले झूठ साबित कर सकते हैं और पूरी अमेरिका कुव्वत भी लग जाए उसको गलत साबित नहीं कर सकते इंशाल्लाह। और जिसने तकरीबन उस दिन मैंने सब चीजें कैमरा को साथ रखा। दर्दनाक कहानी इन बच्चों की थी। दूसरा इनका भाई था, ये भी वो समझ रहे थे ये हमारा दूसरा भाई है, ये भी ड्रोन में जान बहाल हो चुका है। ये इनको उस वक्त कुछ मालूम नहीं हो रहा था कि मेरी माँ और मेरा बाप जो है इनके टुकड़े यहाँ पर पड़े हैं।
And the people who had gathered there adopted a resolution condemning the strikes. The outcome of the Jirga was a big success because it allowed people to come together, listen to stories, and come to a common resolution. Then we went together to a rally, and Tariq Aziz traveled there with us.
We travelled towards the rally, and Tariq sat next to me. He seemed relaxed. He was laughing with his friends. Tariq and everybody else got out, and they went to the rally.
Thousands of Pakistanis came to support a giant rally on Sunday.
The protest against the United States drone attacks in Pakistan.
जो drones हैं, ये पाकिस्तान के अवाम की human rights की खिलाफवर्जी है।
People from all over the country, irrespective of their ages and backgrounds, came together to the rally.
हम अमेरिका को पैगाम देना चाहते हैं कि आप जितने ड्रोन अटैक्स करेंगे, उतने ही लोग आपसे नफरत करेंगे।
After that, Tariq Aziz and the other attendees returned to their homes.
دبل میشه من در جوته میشه که پارلیمنت شه پاور و جوته جلوس غاو ان شاء الله دې میشه خبره ورسي
شدای میشه غسر وکړه سیټینګ مو وکړ ټول سیټینګ چې فوټبال میچ مو دای سبوتا
ډېر کله میش به ته چې ضرورت د وکړ اړین دی فوټبال ولاو د سره چکه
هم برکشته چلوړه میش تپی کلی تا ګاډ شي پلولیتا چې میشټر لګول لکه مو هغه ته وویل د وریر غور سره عبدالعزیز طارق عزیز وریر وای میش سره
یو ګیو سره غاښوله ختم شو او یو سویه وید درڅه دوا سره
چې ګاډي نه مو سره راوبسله مو سره خپل چې کوم ګاډی و دغه ګاډي ته مو سره چکړل دی
د طریق بدن خو چې ما ولیده لکه ډېر تشتابه ته غاښول پریشان شول غمجن شول بېرته لکه د ده بل بیا د دې لکه مونږ خو په علاقې کې لکه پښتو ډېر غا دی لکه مونږ ته و چې بس سیر ته شه
لکه اولاد ته چې ورور سي د اول سر څو لکه ډېر سره ګابراو شي بېژنه شو درنه کېده
Two days later, I got a call.
कि
You know, I heard about Tariq a few days later after I'd gone back to England.
I got an email.
I was at work when we found out.
We got an email and a telephone call.
4 days after the Jirga, I received an email from Shahzad. The email simply said Tariq as the heading, and I opened it instantly. To my shock, I found out that Tariq had been murdered by a drone strike.
And that was a shock. I was like, how is it possible? Where was he? What was he doing? And it's like completely unbelievable.
My initial thoughts were, this wasn't happening, this was just a dream.
We didn't think that Tariq, the 16-year-old kid who wanted to talk about football, would be killed in a drone attack the same week that we'd met him.
تاسو مو وکړه چې نه یا خدای پاک دا څه وشول و دا سره باندې کېږي و دا اوس ولکه دی چې نشته که نه هغه خواشي نشته بلکل نه مجلسونه نه صحبتونه هغه مخکې چې دا په هغه لکه فټبالونه موږ خپل پکې پرېښودل
بیا چې کله یوه کېرته مغه کړل هغه نه بعد زه تلوړل مې دلته بکسه مې وروړه خو ډېر څه حالات و
نو احساس خو بس افسوس کړل دي لکه ډېر زیات افسوس مې وکړ چې یو معصوم بېګناه کس په ډرون باندې
لکه طارق به براشه خو چې به بیا یې چې لکه ایو غادو ورته په پښتو کې کنه چې په کپن کې د تصویر سره کېږدم داسې نه چې په جنت کې رانه شي.
Why did it happen? Why was Tariq killed?
If the U.S. had any information that Tariq Aziz was part of a criminal organization, was planning to carry out attacks on the United States, then our federal law enforcement agents should have been working with the authorities of Pakistan to arrest him.
And one really has to ask the question why the government was not able to arrest or even question him. This is Islamabad we're talking about. It's the capital of the country.
The population is over 1 million people. Jirga was a real public event.
It was at a big hotel. It was advertised widely. It was an open event.
Tariq Aziz was plainly visible to hundreds and hundreds of people. We've talked with reporters. Everything about him that the authorities could have wanted to know about his location and about his recent activities were known to the United States.
So it would have been extremely easy for them to approach him, sit down and talk to him, or for that matter, put him in jail. But instead the CIA chose to go and kill him without giving him the opportunity to give his side of whatever it is that they thought that he had done. There is no evidence there whatsoever. And they've given him no lawyers, there is no judge, and there's no jury.
Our preference is always to capture if we can, because we can gather intelligence. But a lot of the terrorist networks that target the United States, the most dangerous ones, operate in very remote regions, and it's very difficult to capture them.
But what we can discern from the pattern of strikes is that essentially Pakistan's been declared a no-capture zone, that automatically capture is not considered feasible.
If you just look at the numbers, there have been dramatically more people killed in recent years than have been captured.
They've killed maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people in targeted killings, and they've captured a handful.
There are no CIA agents in Waziristan, so they rely on local people.
And this is where the fundamental wrong is, because these people are working for you for money.
And that reliance is utterly misplaced. And what you see in Tariq's case, and it just pains me to say this, that you know without any real room for dispute that there was someone in that room when we were having our jirga who was an informant for the US intelligence services, and that person picked out Tariq. I can tell you as a matter of fact that Tariq was not an extremist. And the way you know what intelligence they relied on to kill someone is what they release immediately after the killing. And in that case, they said 4 militants were killed. And of course, we know that 2 kids were killed. That's how it happened.
I asked the CIA about the strike, and their response was, on that day, no child was killed. In fact, the adult males were supporting al-Qaeda's facilitation network. So despite all of these technological assets and human assets, we're not there. We don't know. And I think there.
Killing Tariq was clearly breaking the law. In fact, it was further than that. It was just murder.
Tariq Aziz was one of almost 300 children killed. Why are these children being killed?
This is a targeted, focused effort at people who are on a list of active terrorists.
The killing of Tariq Aziz has to call into question the credibility of the government's kill list methodology.
The vast majority of the strikes here are against people whose identities the government doesn't know.
We do not know where targeted killings are authorized to be used. We do not know the specific identities of people who have been killed.
The Constitution empowers the president to protect the nation from any imminent threat of attack.
So how can Tariq Aziz, a 16-year-old boy, possibly meet that definition of imminent threat?
The Justice Department has defined an imminent threat based not on whether the threat is specific and immediate, which is what imminent means.
So that people pose imminent threats regardless of whether they are actually engaged in any ongoing immediate attack against the United States.
We have a responsibility to defend this country, and that's what we're doing.
Killing Tariq hasn't made us any safer. It's taken away a young boy's life. It's destroyed a family and a community.
Under the interpretations we've heard from the administration and members of Congress, drone strikes could go on indefinitely against enemies that keep morphing into new enemies. But killing should be the exception, not the rule.
Tariq Aziz should never have died. The U.S. should not have been using military force to attack innocent civilians, let alone children.
I would question a policy that says it is legitimate and even sensible to assassinate a 16-year-old boy.
He was trying to be part of the constructive way forward.
Tariq wanted to do something to help. I think he felt that he had more to give, more to talk about, and more to understand. And the impact of Tariq's murder on my life has been huge. Made me reflect deeply and made me question a lot of things. He has now become a symbolic figure in innocent children that have been killed by drone strikes.
He was just a kid.
There's 2 guys in front, 1 guy in the rear. They're walking up this path, and 2 guys in front are discussing. You can see them having an avid conversation. They've got something slung over their shoulders, which look to be weapons. The mountainous portions of Afghanistan are not so unsimilar from the mountainous regions of Montana. And seeing people with guns walking around the mountains of Afghanistan was like, well, people are walking with guns in the mountains of Montana. But as soon as we get eyes on them, it's like immediately confirm door weapons, confirm your cleared target. So place the target at their feet and we get missiles away. Ends up getting all 3 of them. But the guy in the back, it ends up cutting his leg off above the knee and severing his femoral artery. And he's rolling around. He's holding it, and he's just rolling around. But you can see where his leg is missing, and the blood is spurting out and landing on the ground, and it's cooling. It's hot. It's a hot pool of blood, and it's cooling. And we keep eyes on and watch the guy become the same color as the ground that he bled out on. I could almost see his facial expression. It was, I can almost see his mouth open and crying out. Maybe he cursed us, or maybe he asked Allah for forgiveness for us. Who knows what his last thoughts were, but it wasn't pretty, whatever it was. It was shock and trauma, and his ears were probably ringing, and he was bleeding out, and he was in agony. I didn't know how to react. No one teaches you how to react. They teach you how to do it. There's no, they ignore the reaction part. I wished I never contributed further to that.
Before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured, the highest standard we can set.
The vast majority of those killed in drone strikes, over 98%, have not been high-value targets.
The adoption of signature strikes make indiscriminate killing, a policy.
What they end up with is what I described earlier, the signature strike.
And they moved back to a greater reliance on these signature strikes.
A signature strike is a drone strike that isn't based on the identity of the target.
I obtained classified U.S. intelligence reports on drone strikes. What the documents reveal are the way that signature strikes are put together. And these are strikes against people who fit the signature of what the U.S. government says is a terrorist.
Maybe they are walking in and out of the compound with guns, maybe they're getting in trucks and they're moving to the Afghan border.
And drone operators seated thousands of miles away from the area affected are looking at video feeds, assessing those video feeds, and based on that, making decisions about whether or not someone who's walking through the community is a suspected terrorist.
You conclude on the basis of the behavior that they are a terrorist, and you kill them.
In a number of cases that I looked at, the CIA wasn't sure who they were hitting.
The agency became convinced that it had gotten so good at watching from above that it could distinguish different groups. It could distinguish whether a terrorist leader was at a certain location.
But there is room for a lot of misunderstanding when you're doing something like conducting signature strikes.
A drone strike is only as good as the intelligence that is behind the actual strike.
Anyone who's worked in intelligence knows that intelligence doesn't, quote unquote, prove anything. It's not evidence.
So drones hit what they aim to hit, but if they're aimed at the wrong people, then civilians are killed.
Former U.S. Ambassador Cameron Munter had said that one man's combatant was another man's chump who went to a meeting.
When Leon Panetta was director of the CIA, somebody memorably said, if Leon sees a few guys doing jumping jacks on the ground, he thinks that's a terrorist training camp.
Classified documents suggest U.S. officials don't always know exactly how many or who they're killing.
They don't always have precise ID.
The apparent targeting of people whose identity is not known.
They may not be as precise as many U.S. officials claim.
As soon as those signature strikes begin, we start to see another steep escalation in civilian casualties. So that's what happens when signature strikes go wrong. Large numbers of people die because they don't know who's been killed in most of the drone strikes.
I didn't feel like I was a part of anything good or wholesome or healthy or contributing to the greater good. I felt like I was destroying myself.